What is up? Welcome to the pod. Today we're chatting about the nutritional strategy if it fits your macros, or IIFYM for short. In this episode, we are going to cover what IIFYM is, the pros, the cons, who it's for, who it's not for, my personal experience with it, as well as whether I implement it with my fat loss clients or not. First off, what is if it fits your macros? Let's just take a slight step back and first establish what is a macro. Macro is short for macronutrient, and there are three of them, which are protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Technically, there is a fourth, which is alcohol, but we are going to stick with talking about food for the sake of this episode. Each gram of protein contains 4 calories. Each gram of carbohydrates also contains 4 calories, and each gram of fat has 9 calories. Alcohol has 7 calories per gram, FYI. So you can think about this concept like a tree. At the top of the tree, we have calories, and the 3 branches that make up the calories that we consume are protein, carbs, and fat. For example, an egg has about 70 total calories in it, okay? And each egg contains 6 grams of protein, 1 gram of carbohydrates, and 5 grams of fat. So the 6 grams of protein contains 24 calories, because 6 times 4 equals 24. 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories, which brings us to a total of 28 total calories. And 5 grams of fat has 45 calories, because 9 times 5 equals 45. So that is what our food is made up of from a calorie and macronutrient standpoint. That is how we calculate the amount of energy that each food has. Pretty simple stuff, right? Now, we could get a lot more granular if we ventured further down the tree into more branches, such as vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, different amino acids, which is just a fancy word for protein. Protein is made up of amino acids, but in this episode, macros is as far as we're going to go. So if it fits your macros is a food paradigm that allows you to account for and track calories and macros. That's it. So let's say that someone is eating 2,000 total calories per day, and their macronutrient targets are 150 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbs, and 90 grams of fat. Those macros total 2,000 calories. That is their macro framework, and then all that they do is make food choices based on what they feel like eating and hitting those targets. That is IIFYM in a nutshell. So now that we've established the what, let's dig into some of the pros and the cons, because there are trade-offs to everything. First up, let's go with the pro category. IIFYM, as you can imagine, is super flexible in terms of food choices because literally every single food is on the table. The only thing that you need to do is work it into your daily targets in the appropriate portions. You can also work with just about any recipe that you come across. You'll likely need to make some tweaks and adjustments. However, just about everything is workable in one way or another. This approach also does a great job of teaching folks about calories and macros, which is super helpful because while most folks have heard about the terms calories and macronutrients, they often don't really know what they actually mean or how to apply that information in the real world. IIFYM gets you very familiar with the concept of the calories and the macros in the food that you are consuming. It also gets you in the habit of tracking what and how much you're eating, which is an amazing way to increase food awareness because, man, is accurate tracking ever a sober experience for a lot of folks. Meaning, what and how much people think that they're eating is very different than what and how much they're actually eating. And the same concept often applies to things like alcohol intake and movement via step count. We tend to drastically underestimate how much we eat and drink while we drastically overestimate how much we move and how much energy we burn each day. Tracking clears a lot of this up because the numbers don't lie. And if for some reason something isn't adding up numbers-wise, fortunately, your body is the ultimate barometer because we can forget to record things, make mistakes via portions, etc., etc., etc. But the body always accounts for everything absolutely perfectly. It is the gold standard form of feedback. Another pro is that if you hit a fat loss plateau and you've been tracking your macros accurately, all you need to do is make adjustments, follow them, and then you'll start losing fat again. Now, to be fair, this isn't isolated to IIFYM because if you are tracking in any way, shape, or form, you can take advantage of nutritional adjustments in order to avoid fat loss plateaus. Now let's dig into the cons. The first pro that I mentioned is that IIFYM is flexible. And the truth is that food flexibility can be a double-edged sword because there is such a thing as too much flexibility for a lot of folks. For example, if every single food in the grocery store is on the table, that can be overwhelming for a lot of people because it's like, okay, where do I even start? Like, give me some guidelines, right? It's like when you got a school project back in the day and your teacher is like, you can do your project on absolutely anything in the world. And you're just like, oh my God, anything? Can you at least give me a subject area to work with? Meaning, a lot of people like to have at least some specific landlines. And if you are one of those folks, IIFYM could very well be too flexible for you, as strange as that may sound. With IIFYM, there is also a tendency towards de-emphasizing food quality because when folks are looking at food purely as calories and macros, they often overlook the vitamins, minerals, etc., i.e. the other branches of the tree. IIFYM has the quantity aspect built into it, which is awesome. However, it's really only half of the picture because quality also matters. Now, someone could easily sidestep this by favoring single ingredient whole foods while also hitting their calorie and macro targets. And voila, we're sorted. However, it's just not quite as common as we'd hope for IIFYMers to favor food quality as well. Another thing that often gets overlooked with IIFYM is digestion. If you've been following me for any period of time, you know how much I emphasize the importance of digestion for things like inflammation, sense of well-being, cognitive function, and just overall health. Digestion is key, and if it fits your macros, doesn't factor it in unless, like the food quality dealio that we just spoke about, you go out of your way to dial it in yourself. Another con is that you not only need to weigh and measure your food, you also need to log it into an app like MyFitnessPal. So while we have the added flexibility on the front end, the cost to that flexibility is that you need to enter every single thing into a calorie and macro tracking app. Technically, you could use pen and paper, but I've yet to come across someone who macro tracks like that in the real world. Also, with a lot of these apps like MyFitnessPal, anyone can enter foods into their database. And so that increases the likelihood for inaccurate calorie counts. And so if you're just starting to familiarize yourself with this stuff, accuracy could potentially be an issue, even if you are logging absolutely everything. A more nuanced con to IIFYM that often goes under the radar is actually creating a bit of a disconnect from food because of the hyper focus on the numbers. For example, when you are logging everything that you eat into an app, after a while, you can begin to look at your food solely as numbers. So it's like, this meal contains X protein, Y carbs, and Z fat. And like the con that we just mentioned via the tendency to de-emphasize food quality, this is one way that it often happens. Also, when food quality takes a dip, hunger tends to ramp up because the highest quality foods are also the most satiating and filling, meaning eating more healthfully makes it easier to eat more healthfully because hunger is not sustainable. But again, to be fair, someone could still follow an IIFYM approach, really emphasize food quality, and therefore still put themselves in a great position on all fronts. So who is this approach for? First of all, folks that don't mind weighing, measuring, and entering all of their food into an app. If right off the bat you know that that's not you, this approach is a skip. As a side note, IIFYM can be great as a temporary learning tool just to familiarize yourself with calories, macros, and tracking. And so you don't necessarily have to use this approach and only this approach for the rest of your life. It can be a bridge, and that brings us to my personal experience. I have a lot of experience with IIFYM, and it taught me a ton. It was actually the approach that I used to get in shape for the very first time in my mid-20s. Since then, I've gone through periods of tracking via MyFitnessPal if I felt like it, but for the most part, I choose not to track that way anymore. Regardless, I still do have a very good idea of what and how much I eat on a daily basis. Do I use IIFYM with my clients? Occasionally I do if I have a specific client that wants to take this approach. However, it's fairly rare because most of my clientele just don't want to enter everything that they eat into an app. I do have my clients weigh and measure their food because the quantity piece is super important in terms of fat loss as well as health. However, we're also sure to dial in food quality, again, for health and most importantly, sustainability purposes. So if I rarely use IIFYM with my own clients, how does my approach with my clientele actually look? They get tons of high quality protein, carb, fat, fruit, and veggie options to choose from in each and every meal, and their portions are specific to them based on their goals, preferences, lifestyle, time constraints, etc. Like I mentioned, we do weigh and measure our food. However, 98% of them are not entering their food into an app. I take care of the quantity and quality aspects for them, and they learn all about these aspects of nutrition and fat loss via the process of working together. So I use a bit of a hybrid approach between a meal plan and a calorie/macro tracking concept. And in my opinion, it's the best of both worlds. And my clients really enjoy the flexibility that it offers while still having clear and concise foods and portions to choose from at each and every meal based on their specific needs, all within a sustainable lifestyle context. If you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and/or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. On Instagram, I'm at N1Fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the N1 Fitness, and on YouTube, I am at Marcus Sadu /N1 Fitness. Feel free to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, if you'd like to, of course, and be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.